Tell everybody where you are. You got some really like cool, funky pillows.
So yeah, I'm coming to you from Jerusalem, where it is 11 p.m. We've done this once before on Word on the Street live, because when we're doing it live, we're really live, and I'm live in Jerusalem at 11 p.m. And I would love to walk you over to see the view. We tried that once before, and I take it you really can't see when I use the camera from the computer.
Are you same hotel or different? It's all vantage
This
points
is a
of the
different hotel room. Different hotel room. I think it's the same artwork though. So it's different hotel, same artwork.
Okay, so that's what we're seeing there with the red and the.
Yeah.
I like it. I'm actually very much digging the background. You know,
you like the throw pillows?
Maybe you can take one with you.
Yeah.
And something else we need to start with. Big day today, Jeremy. You know, you ambushed me on my birthday, so I kind of feel like this is only fair. So you want to tell everybody, or should I tell you we'll tell everybody what's going on?
So doesn't everybody spend their 25th wedding anniversary 6,000 miles away from their spouse doing work in the middle of a conflict zone? Is that not normal? I'm not sure.
Dedication to the cause is real.
Yeah.
So, Hannah, you said, right? I mean, or was it you, or maybe it was Becca who said, the 25th anniversary is the Hebron anniversary. That's
fun. I hope that wasn't you, Hannah. That's terrible. So I think my wife may be joining us for Word on the Street live today. So happy anniversary, honey.
So why don't we get started? Welcome everybody to Word on the Street. Maybe I'll do a little bit more of the hosting duties since we have Jeremy off in the Middle East. Actually we didn't even talk about this, Jeremy, but maybe I'll welcome everyone since I'm comfortably here in Washington. But good to see everyone.
You're in my chair, by the way. You're in my chair.
Right? Yes, I am in your chair. Hannah has taken my chair. Our colleague Hannah Morris, who's becoming more of a regular here. Jeremy is currently, in Israel and Palestine on a congressional delegation. We are going to hear from him about what he has seen on the ground. And also just have a conversation about a lot of problematic things that are happening right now.
There is a lot happening. I mean, it is really, I was discussing this with some of the people, we spend a lot of time on buses on these trips, and both of you know this, and we do a lot of standing at the front talking on the microphone, and it's just astounding to think about it. I mean, this week, right, Iran, we're going to talk about, I want to get your take, Ilan. I want to hear, Hannah, what is happening on the Hill related to Iran, but we're like on the verge of serious military confrontation, apparently. So that's happening this week, right? The Board of Peace, the grand plan, right? They are meeting tomorrow for the first time. And there are supposed to be some announcements about the stabilization force and commitments of money to redevelopment, and other pieces are being touted as being announced tomorrow. The Israeli cabinet just basically reversed 60 years of policy of how the occupation is run, right? They had a majorly important cabinet decision last week. All of that is just this past week. So we're at an incredible moment. But Ilan, why don't you start? Because I think the issue that really should be at the front of everybody's mind is the 4-alarm fire when it comes to the potential for conflict with Iran. So bring us up to date on what's been happening.
Yeah, and just a reminder to everyone before we get started please press that like button or that restack button, get us more attention and get us moving up the algorithm so more people can see this content. We are at a 4-alarm fire moment, Jeremy. And Hannah, I think, on Iran, in a way we have been anticipating for the past few weeks, but now it feels like we are here. We had, I'll take everybody back and talk a little bit about the history of how we got here, and I'll just give you my assessment of at least where we are right now. We had about a month ago these very serious protests, actually 40 days ago.
Right. It's the 40 to the end of the morning period, by the way, today.
Exactly. And that's actually significant but we'll talk about it. There is this, but these protests begin And Trump comes out and very loudly expresses support for the protesters. As a result of that, a lot more protesters come out. They get slaughtered by this regime. Trump doesn't really plan any of this out. Turns to the military in the region. Is like, all right, we're going to act now. And everybody says to him, well, we don't really have a good plan, and we're not postured militarily to act right now in a way where we can actually respond to Iranian retaliation. And so they put a hold on everything for weeks. And somehow this transitions into a negotiation on Iran's nuclear program. But at the same time, Trump starts to build up, and the U.S. builds up its military capabilities in the region. And Trump keeps saying, because he said it 6 weeks ago, we're going to threatening military action. And now this week, we had a second round of negotiations between Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff and Iranian negotiators, and seemed to go okay, at least publicly. But the reports since, over the last 24 to 48 hours, now that a whole bunch of military assets have been moved in, is a lot more is flowing in, and talk about potential action as early as this weekend. Now, here is the bottom line. This is entirely self-generated, us putting pressure on ourselves to somehow act. And what Trump is talking about doing is essentially conducting a regime change operation in Iran with no plan for the day after or for what happens after. We're just going to start striking a bunch of targets, trying to take out the leadership, see what happens, with no plan for how the U.S. gets out of that, or what even comes out the other end. And the real potential for us to be bogged down in the Middle East again, with all these forces having to stay there for a long period of time, again, with no real public debate at all. I mean, at least George Bush generated a major debate. Right now, we're just kind of sleepwalking into this. That's what we're looking at potentially right now. I have no question the U.S. will be militarily superior to Iran and be able to do this, at least take out a lot of the leadership, cause a lot of damage. But what about the day after? And that's what I'm looking at. And I'm incredibly concerned. And when you look at the press and you look at everything that's happening, it's like this isn't even happening. You know?
And
well, not just Congress.
Right.
It's Israel. I mean, I think a lot of Israelis were really shocked last time around and hadn't lived through having missiles like come into Tel Aviv. I mean, if it was 33 Israelis that were killed, billions of dollars economic damage. I mean, this could be much bigger than that. And then when you get to Congress, I think part of the problem is it's like the boy who cried wolf. We've been going through this over and over. And I am seeing, wheels turning today from some staffers, and I am seeing statements coming out from a few members, but, they're out of session and members are hard to reach. Staff are also abroad. So I think that I anticipate there will be Hill action likely next week, but it could be well too late if we have something happen on Saturday, Sunday.
I mean, it's really astounding. I'm traveling with members of Congress, right? I mean, that is what the trip I am on. And it's several. I mean, it's 7 members of Congress, and some of them quite senior. And the fact that there has been zero congressional notification, zero congressional engagement, zero congressional debate and discussion. We've already watched now for 13 months as Congress has abdicated its constitutional responsibilities on a whole range of fronts. But one of the most significant is the power to declare war. Now, a 12-day war that Israel conducted with Iran in June, which had one round of strikes from the U.S., is one thing. A surgical operation for a few hours into Caracas in order to extract Maduro. Okay, that's, in limited one-time operation. They had a cover story about, some form of criminal enforcement of an arrest warrant. But this is talking about an actual war. I mean, this is an actual full-on war, and zero congressional involvement, Ilan. I mean, and Hannah, this is astounding to me. The abdication of congressional responsibility, never seen anything like it.
And here's the thing on this. It feels to me very similar actually to Iraq in 2003, happening more quickly and maybe not with as much investment, right? But you had the war in Afghanistan, and it went pretty easily and swimmingly. And it created this level of confidence for the administration to then go in and do something much bigger and more complicated and reckless and get itself stuck. And what you've got here is Trump feels good about the 12-day war last summer. Trump feels good about taking out Maduro. And so it's like, all right, we can do this with Iran. This is no problem. This is a lot more complicated. It's going to take a lot longer, and it's going to be much more complex. Now, we also have to be smart in how we argue this politically and also realistic in what to expect. Because what we can't do is say the sky is falling, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. Because look, go back to the war in 2003 with Iraq, right? The initial result, whatever it is, I don't think it'll be regime change because he's not launching a major ground invasion. He's just going to bomb the place a lot and try to take out the leadership, probably. That'd be my best guess of what he tries to do. As many targets regime targets as they can. The initial images, the initial stories will be, look at how strong the U.S. is. Look at how well this is working out, or at least not badly. There'll be some firing, there'll be that, but even the very real costs in Israel during the 12-day war, certainly while it was going on, were overwhelmed by like, wow, look at how incredible.
Could have been so much worse, was the theory. Yeah.
And so I think we need, but this is going to put us in a position where we suddenly own this massive mess. And again, what Trump said, 6 months ago now was, we've obliterated Iran's nuclear program. Everything is done. And we're never going to have to do this again. And here we are 6 months later doing it again. And so this is also a sign that we're going to be at this for a long time, again and again and again, if he does this. And so we just need to be smart and not say the sky is falling, while also understanding that this is putting us into a potential major strategic hole.
And I think, like last time with the nuclear strikes, they were very focused on specific, targets where you weren't seeing civilian casualties in Iran. And I can imagine something much broader where, if leadership is scattered and not necessarily all in bunkers, you do have a much more upsetting series of images that come out from the region.
So, but Jeremy,
I think there's two other things I just want to put on the table for folks to just keep their eye on, which I've learned this week and I didn't fully, think through, and I don't think the Trump administration has thought through. One is the attacks in the summer did significant damage to Iran's capacities with longer and medium range rockets, but they left 100% intact the short range rockets. And the short range rockets can reach bases and other assets in the region. And Iran didn't fire those last time, and the U.S. isn't positioned to take out such a wide range of short range missiles. And that is of real danger for escalation, because those can reach a base, those can reach the oil fields, those can reach, the UAE is literally, just a within view, right, of the Iranian across the straits. And I don't think we are fully understanding the escalation risk and the short range rockets that were not damaged at all. The other thing, if they do a decapitation strategy and they go after the leadership, usually there's some theory about what follows. What's the theory about what follows here? Is it that the Shah's son is somehow going to be flown in on a Air Force plane into Tehran and come back? Do we not remember how we got into this mess in the first place with Iran in 1953, right? It was this exact, and we brought a Pahlavi into power, on the backs of American CIA coup in 1953. And this is how we started the whole problem that we got back to today. So these two things of the absolutely no succession, I can't even come up with a succession idea of what follows if you do the decapitation strategy. And then the short range rocket threat, I hadn't fully processed, but those are two things that I heard analytically this week.
Yeah. And I do think this would be an American military strike. And so therefore American led, not Israeli led. And so the targeting in the Gulf and American bases in the Gulf will be much higher than last time. I imagine part of the reason they're bringing so much stuff into the region is because they're going to try to take out as much of those retaliatory capabilities with the first strike. But we'll have to wait and see. But Jeremy, we should pivot. And you have spent the last few days in Israel and Palestine. Very interested to hear what you are hearing on the ground. You also visited the CMCC for the first time, which is the command center where a lot of the post-conflict Gaza work is now being done with the U.S. military. What did you hear? What are you hearing? Maybe overall, but let's start with Gaza. It feels like a good place to start.
Yeah, no, and I want to start with the CMCC. It's the Civilian Military Coordinating Center, something like that.
Yeah.
I always get lost in my acronyms, but the CMCC is in Kiryat Gat, which is, let's say, a 30-minute drive or so from Gaza in the south of Israel. And this was my first time being there. Didn't know exactly what to expect. And I know that you haven't yet been there, Ilan or Hannah. It was a very impressive setup. I will give it that. This is something that was stood up relatively quickly after the ceasefire was announced and as the 20-point plan was being rolled out. It's a very, very large warehouse-like facility, multiple floors, very big open space layout with the kind of setup that people are familiar with from movies, TV, documentaries, where you've sort of seen like rows and rows of desks and people. There's at least 150, I'd say, American military there, but there are 73 nations involved in this. And at any given time, 20, 30, 40 nations have representatives in the facility. And there are numerous international organizations and INGOs that are there as well. We were allowed to, view the morning briefing. Again, it's not confidential. They wouldn't have let us in if this were top secret or confidential. But they did a military style morning briefing, getting reports from a series of different coordinating councils that relate to logistics and security and food and humanitarian and all of the things you would think need to be kept an eye on. And it was done, with American leadership and reports out from American personnel. And then also international officials reporting in to the whole team as to what's going on, the number of trucks, very specific hard count and realistic information, things being stuck at the Allenby crossing. The UN materials are stuck, but there are commercial trucks going in, and that level is much higher than it's been for a long time. But the content of that truck is not the same as the content of a UN truck. The kinds of shelter and medical and other supplies is not what's coming in for the marketplace, right? I mean, that's not what people are selling. And it was just really interesting to see that there was professionalism, seriousness of purpose everywhere. Big printouts of the 20-point plan. What are we doing here? What's our mission? And every pillar in this place, there's a copy of the 20-point plan and constant reference to what their end goal is, which is to help the people of Gaza to get on the right track. So I found the place and the visit to be refreshing and focused on a mission that I can get behind, which is to actually try to help with the preparation for the introduction of a stabilization force. There are real serious preparations being made for its presence on the ground in the green zone on the side of the yellow line where Israel is in control, but just actual presence of international forces, which is part of the 20-point plan. And they are clearing the ground and getting that ready. So I felt very good about the way that appeared to be. And I don't think they did a show just for us. This, it seemed to be the way that it was running.
Yeah, I mean, look, when I've talked to people who visited, I think you get the same impression. I'll give you some of the criticisms I hear, because I think it's also important to understand how complicated and hard this is. Everything I hear is it's an incredible place to do coordination on humanitarian assistance and, just all these different entities together. That's just very valuable. Still, I think a lot of concern that the big political decisions are almost entirely detached from the CMCC. and are being driven by a very small group of people who aren't necessarily always understanding exactly what's going on the ground. And then skepticism over some of the details, like, for example, the ISF, and you're going to need to get the ISF into actually into the part of Gaza where there are Palestinians, right? I mean, and challenges like that. So I think there is so much, but that could still go wrong, that needs to be better, but at the same time, even in conversations Hannah and I had today with senior Gulf official folks who are here for the Board of Peace, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit. Yeah. There is this, you do have to just go step by step. This is a mammoth project. And so you can be skeptical about some things and critical about others, and deeply concerned about what is happening, especially what the Israeli government is doing in the West Bank and elsewhere, and also admire and support, just trying to go step by step and build on this 20-point plan is kind of, my take on it. And having not been there.
What did you hear? I mean, you guys met with some folks who were in town in Washington for this. What did you guys hear about the Board of Peace meeting and potential announcements that might be made at it?
There will be infusions, it sounds like, of big dollars. And, these folks understand that this is the game in town and we need it to succeed. And so that is the attitude that they're having. And that's how we feel. Like, we need this to work so that life is better and there is self-determination for the Palestinian people. I mean, I'm curious, Jeremy, if you've gotten any sense of further updates on the registration issue for NGOs. I know that you mentioned INGOs being there, but where that's falling, what kind of messaging you're getting. And then also, of course, a lot of this won't be transparent, but we're not getting the full picture because journalists still cannot get into Gaza. So I'm just wondering if you've gotten any updates on those fronts.
Yeah, no, look, I mean, I'm not going to be an apologist for all of the many problems that there are, and the lack of transparency is at the top of the list, right? We can't have no idea what's really going on if no one's allowed in. And the members of Congress I was traveling with would have liked to have gone in. We would have liked to have gone in with the group to actually see, and they were not allowed in either by our own government or by the Israeli government. So agree with you on the lack of transparency. We did get a briefing from inside Gaza from a doctor there about some of the issues. For instance, there are 11,000 patients who need to be medevaced out, who need the kinds of treatments that they can't get given what the state of the healthcare system is in Gaza. And despite the fact that so-called Rafah crossing is open, let's say they are calling it open, you have 11,000 people who need to get out, who can't get out and aren't being allowed out, right? Who need medical help. So I'm not making an apology for that. The number of trucks that have the necessary equipment to weatherize the shelters that hundreds of thousands of people are living through the winter in Gaza with. And we just had an immense dust storm, right? And it's cold and rainy and windy because it's winter. And that weatherization material is stuck on trucks that's not being allowed in because it's dual use. And dual use is an undefined category at the discretion, truck by truck, of the Israeli personnel on the ground. And so, these are things, I'm not making any excuse for it. But I will say that, there are people involved in this whose goal is to do the right thing. And, as you discussed, the end of February, there's a new law that requires the registration of the international staff of the INGOs that have been working in Gaza and on the West Bank. And these INGOs are not going to cooperate, and there's going to be delisting of them, but they're still going to have their local staff. So much as with UNRWA, which continues to operate, right? It still has 11,000 employees. It actually has more employees on the ground today than it had before the war, because the local staff can continue to work. The international staff is sitting in Amman, or we talked to somebody who's sitting in London, and they're doing the management and the supervision because they're not allowed to be on the ground, but it doesn't mean they're not functioning. And so that's, a little bit the reality versus the, what we're all debating. These organizations are committed to their mission. They've got great local staff. They have cooperation from other entities that are on the ground. So for instance, if the World Food Program, not to call anybody out, but if the World Food Program can get the food in, and then UNRWA can help with the distribution, the local staff, then you're finding a way in a difficult environment to make things work. And that's the commitment of these incredible people who are doing this as their jobs, right? And this is their life's work, is to make a disaster like this a little bit better. And so they're going to persevere. And these organizations are going to keep working despite the Israeli law and the certification running out on February 28th. And so I think on the ground, the reality won't be, the doomsday that one might sort of think in theory as we sit thousands of miles away.
Yeah. And I want to take us just back to one thing in terms of the Board of Peace. I think it really connects with that. Both things are bad and we need to keep making progress, which is one of the things we heard in conversation. Is I do think I would expect to see multiple billions of dollars of announcements tomorrow. And that in and of itself is a good thing. We'll see how much of it actually makes a difference and how long it takes to get in, and it'll all be a challenge. But the other thing that just in some of our conversations I heard from folks who are dealing with this is and it's really hard with Trump, because we just spent 10 minutes talking about how insane and terrible this decision on Iran could end up being. And then yet here we are trying to support some of the things they're doing in Gaza. And somebody put it to me today. They said, you have to be able to flip the mute button and listen to the things that are constructive, and then put the mute button on, as opposed to we're talking about how a lot of countries, especially like Europeans, have decided we're not going to participate in the Board of Peace. And I understand the Board of Peace is a problem. Like, we certainly don't support the concept of the Board of Peace when it starts to involve doing things beyond Gaza, when it starts to involve being a substitute for the UN, when it starts to involve Donald Trump asking people to give him $1 billion in order to be participant. Disagree with all those things, and at the same time, actually they have a small executive board of people who actually do know something about Gaza and care and want to meet tomorrow and raise a few $1 billion to get things into Gaza. You've got to, unfortunately, in this world,
pull the levers that you can.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, that's a hard and complicated, thing. But this is kind of where we are.
One other thing that I picked up in these last 48 hours that I hadn't fully focused in on, there's this whole Board of Peace and its charter, and the craziness about the president being the chair, even beyond he's no longer president, all that sort of stuff. But the UN Security Council passed a resolution, and it gave authority for 2 years only to this board to actually manage this situation and to work with this international stabilization force. It is a 2-year limited mandate that the Security Council voted on, but it was unanimous. There were no vetoes, and they moved it forward. If this turns out to be a complete charade and nothing positive is happening, the mandate runs out at the end of 27. So there is a, put up or shut up and performance based, right? And if this crazy board setup, if you, as you said, you press the mute button on the crazy board setup, but if Nikolai Mladenov and the 15-member Palestinian National Coordinating Committee and folks who actually know what they're doing, like Sigrid Kaag, and the World Bank president and others who are involved in the executive board for Gaza, and the people I met at the CMC, if they can make things happen over the course of the next 2 years, then we should support that.
Yeah, could not agree more. Jeremy, maybe want to pivot a little bit to the West Bank, because you've also spent a lot of time out there over the last couple of days. What are you hearing and seeing in the West Bank?
Yeah, no, it's quite a pivot. And it's so important for people to realize and remember, while everything else is going on, that in a way, beneath the cover of the fact that there is so much focus on Gaza and there is all this, to use a J Street term, all this mesha gossip about the Board of Peace, and we've got the whole Iran crisis burning. What's happening on the West Bank is historic in the sense of this is a paradigm shift of what's happening on the West Bank. We've known that this is creeping or even galloping annexation, right, over the course of quite a number of years now, and the creation of a one-state reality. But there has never been an Israeli government decision to actually reverse the laws and the practices that they put in place for the last 60 years of this occupation, right? And that is what happened about 2 weeks ago. And we are really right now at a hinge point in how all of this is conducted on the West Bank. And the taking away of powers of the PA that have been in place since Oslo, the increase in Israeli claims of ability to determine ownership of land and to insert security forces into areas that they haven't been going on a regular basis till now. These are really important and epic changes, and they're part of the Smotrich plan to ensure that there will not ever be a Palestinian state. And he's out publicly saying that he's hoping that these steps will lead Palestinians to voluntarily leave. I mean, we are watching the unfolding in real time of, an effort to push out the population. And because we're so focused on the fact there could be a war tomorrow with Iran, and there's, the suffering that has just happened in the last 2.5 years in Gaza, we're not able to devote the attention. And our own democracy, by the way, we have fascism rising in our own country and a military occupation of our own cities. So, we've got all this going on, and beneath this surface, the West Bank situation is beyond the worst I've ever seen.
And then the question is where is the Trump administration? I mean, Trump has publicly said, I don't want annexation. There cannot be annexation. And either they're unwilling to see it this way, or, they're giving the green light. And even worse, they don't see that this is very much undermining everything that they're doing in Gaza. They don't see any connection. They don't see how it, essentially throws a wrench in their Abraham Accords expansion plans. It's so short-sighted because you do know there are some actors in the circle who could, press upon Trump to, put some pressure on Bibi, and they're just not.
Yeah, I would love to see Trump come out and say, look, I want to make the greatest peace we've ever seen, and I'm going to get the whole region together. But these guys, Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, they're throwing it all away because they are instead focusing on annexing the West Bank. And if he were to do that, that would be a bit of an earthquake in Israeli politics and really present that choice. I don't think he'd have to do a lot more than that. But you're right, Hannah, he's not doing it. And look, you can make the argument when you really look at these actions over the last couple of weeks. I'm becoming increasingly convinced. I'm not going to say it there yet. But what is annexation? Annexation is applying the laws of, you're saying this is part of my state. I am taking this territory. I'm going to apply my laws now to this territory and no longer have it under the laws of occupation. And that is what's been happening. That's what for the last few days. If you look at it, we're going to have the Ministry of Justice responsible now instead of the IDF or the MOD. We're going to have different parts of the Israeli government, different cabinet ministries, taking responsibility for things that for 60 years have been under the IDF for a reason, because the laws of occupation say it needs to be militarily run. And so this is annexation by another name. And by simply not saying we are annexing, they kind of get the Trump administration to then say, well, we oppose annexation. And not just the Trump administration, a lot of others, including, meanwhile, people are just focusing on so many other things. So
yeah,
I will
say, I just want to, I'm not going to name the names of the members who are with us because, we want to respect right now that they're here. And it just takes a lot, I think, for members to spend several days with us looking at this firsthand. And I really feel they're going to come back, Hannah, and have a renewed sense of urgency around the importance of raising their voices. We went to one of the villages we regularly visit, El-Khair, in the South Hebron Hills, and probably a lot of people who watch Word on the Street are familiar with that village, and we've had congressional letters in the past that have helped to stop threats of demolition. people will know it as the home of Aude Athelin, who was murdered by the settler leader Ilan Levy, caught on camera. And so we were visiting there today, and they have set up a very small artificial turf rug that they've rolled out that constitutes a, like a little football field for the kids, right? I mean, it's just a rug essentially thrown out on the rocky terrain and a couple of goalposts. And already the settlers have filed and gotten a demolition order with the IDF for the structure of throwing this astroturf rug down and putting 2 goalposts up. And what they've done, the settlers sort of surrounded the field with Israeli flags around a fence around the field. And it's just this sense of oppressive being caged in, and using the Israeli flag to do that around the field for the kids while you have it threatened with demolition. I mean, you cannot spend a day looking at stuff like this and not come back motivated to raise your voice, and to stand up and speak out. And I think you will find there will be, a number of members of Congress who are going to want to come back and do something about this particular demolition order at Khair.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a sharp contrast to these huge, sprawling farms, illegal farms that are kind of being put up that magically appear supposedly by rogue actors, but somehow get connected to water, electricity, everything within days, are taking up huge pieces of territory, and with no demolition orders and no response from the Israeli government. And then you have, putting up a soccer field. It's a pretty strong contrast. I will say one thing, Jeremy, one good piece of news this week is we did see reporting that Ilan Levy is actually going to be brought up on charges for the killing.
I did not see that. It is really important. And if that happens, that's a step in the right direction. And, for all of us, I mean, so many international folks and Americans and Israelis have visited Khair to show solidarity with the community over that murder, and for there to be some accountability would be so important.
Yeah, we have to be careful to not spike any footballs, because this is the beginning of a long process, and you can stop all the way through. And even if, let's say, a world where he was convicted, you can see the sentence being incredibly lenient. There's a lot that could still happen, but at least this announcement this week, I think we have to view as a positive development,
And as long as the members, not just they come back motivated, but also motivated to talk to their fellow colleagues, to help inform them, to help them understand why this is urgent, and why this isn't just token to state language that they are also used to, and what does it mean to be behind the establishment of a Palestinian state side by side with a secure Israel. I mean, I think that is what's most compelling is, the firsthand accounts, and then being able to pass that on and shape the debate in Congress.
So
one thing, I don't know whether the team can find this on the back end and put this into the chat, but we did highlight in one of our weekend Substacks on Word on the Street the hour-long documentary that ran that actually gave you visuals and was a really excellent job at showing what is happening on the ground, including in Khair. And so that link to that hour-long documentary in our Substack, or if we just put the YouTube link in the chat, I think would be really important if people have not seen what this looks like. You can't understand it until you see it with your own eyes.
And it was done for folks on Israeli public television, with a long interview with Smotrich, where this wasn't even investigative. He was almost bragging and smiling and talking about all the things that he's doing.
Totally.
Right? I mean, it was like, I won, and this is what we're going to have to. This is what we're going to have to reverse. I'm wondering, Jeremy, if we should maybe start to wrap up and let you go to bed. But I did.
Only almost
what?
It's only almost midnight here. Don't worry about it.
All right. I think it might be time, unless there's I don't know if there's anything else here. I did want to, before we did that though, emphasize again for everyone, we haven't done it already, just a reminder, we have our convention coming up just about a week away now. Is it a week away? Oh my God, it's like 10 days away. Yes, February 28th to March 3rd. Use the code WOTS, word on the street. Check out for a special 20% discount. Again, click on the heart button. But this convention, we've talked about it a lot. Actually, Hannah, I'm going to turn it to you because you have not talked about the convention or word on the street yet, and you are a J Street veteran. So, you tell
the
us.
reason to come is to feel invigorated. I do feel that when I'm in a room with J Street supporters and aligned folks, that you remember why do we do this? And there was a great email we sent out a few weeks ago that it is really this is defiance to come. This is about putting your phones away and standing up for democracy. This is a democratic act to show up. And I'm particularly excited because there are a number of members from the House, a number of senators who will be making remarks, people reflecting on the travels that they've made just this week who will be coming onto the stage, and a lot of folks reflecting on how much Congress and the political debate has changed in the last 3 years. What kind of cracks that we're seeing in the Republican and conservative base. There will be very interesting discussions about that. And so this is your opportunity to, move beyond the screen and create new relationships, deepen relationships. And that is how we will win ultimately.
And we'll be doing the word on the street from the convention, right? I'm really excited to do this, you guys, that we're going to have like a little stage and people are going to watch us doing it live. And, we'll bring in people who are going to be doing speaking, and we'll have a whole schedule for people to be able to catch up on some of the speakers that we'll be having there. So I'm looking forward to doing word on the street from the convention.
Yeah, and that'll be great too. In addition to some of the folks that we'll have live, I think we'll have a launch. We'll launch with a kickoff show at, all right, now I'm improvising, so don't hold me to it, but 6:00, I believe, on Eastern. Saturday night, right?
Eastern, not Israel time.
Yeah. We'll do a launch episode, but then we'll have shows going for 2.5 days, and many of you will be at the convention, so you won't necessarily see them then, but we'll put them up over time as well, and just an opportunity for a lot of content, a lot of interesting things to listen to in the weeks ahead, and a lot of guests that we wouldn't otherwise get to talk to. So I think that'll definitely be, I'm looking forward to that. The word on the street marathon coming soon towards you. Jeremy, I want to give you any final words before any other big takeaways or things you want to talk about before we let you go to bed for the night. Well,
I will say we just had a dinner tonight with a number of the groups that are involved in the Alliance for Middle East Peace. The Alliance for Middle East Peace is an umbrella group for about 200 organizations that do people-to-people coexistence work, building the kind of relationships that are so vital to finding a way out of this mess. And through all of the pain and all of the tragedy of the last 2.5 years, these 200 groups have kept at it. And these are Israelis and Palestinians working together through the horrors of October 7th, through the horrors of the Gaza war, through the horrors of the occupation and what we saw with our own eyes today on the West Bank and see in East Jerusalem. These folks are still keeping the faith alive. They're keeping hope alive by the work that they're doing. And there are hundreds of these groups, and there are thousands and tens of thousands of activists involved in them. And so for all of us who are doing this work from 6,000 miles away, it's really important to know that here on the ground, there is such an incredible group of allies and so many people who are looking to us for support and inspiration, and we can draw inspiration and hope from them. And that's really an important message, that after a long day of riding up and down the West Bank and seeing the horror, to come back and have that dinner and hear these inspiring voices was really important to me, and I think is an important message to leave people with.
Yeah, and I think we'll get to hear some of those voices if you're in Washington in 10 days again, right? I mean, that's I always appreciate that as one of the most moving and effective parts of this trip, and just a reminder of what it is we're all fighting for.
We're looking forward to it.
All right. I think with that, next time, I'm not sure. Well, we will see everybody. I'm not sure what we're doing next week, Jeremy. We might be taking the week off.
We will be live 4 p.m. Eastern next Wednesday. We will be live with something for all of you.
All right. Take care, everybody.